And at 3:05, we will call this January meeting of the Midway-Pacific Highway Community Planning Group to order. Thanks everyone for attending. So, jumping straight into our agenda, I did circulate the November minutes. Thank you very much, Jason, for getting those out to us in time. And I'm looking for a motion to approve our November minutes, unless anyone has any corrections, suggestions, clarifications, typo amendments of that nature.
I'll make a motion to approve them. I didn't see anything that needed to be changed, and thank you, Jason, for doing them.
Thank you, Judy. I'll second that and call the question. Jason, do you want to go down the roll? Do you want to just raise your hand? How do you want to do it? All right.
Sorry, my mouse isn't working there. I think we can just go one by one here.
All right. I will go down the screen as I see it then. Karen, motion on the minutes?
Yes.
All right. DK is a yes. Judy?
Yes.
Jason?
Approved.
Approved. Thank you. Todd?
Yes.
Thank you kindly. And Amy?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So with that being done, we will now transition into our next item, which is non-agenda public comment. And this is an opportunity for anyone who's in the audience or from the board to speak to anything that pertains to the responsibility and roles of this group, but is not on today's agenda. So if anyone has any non-agenda comment, now would be the time. Please raise your hand. Becky Rapp, I see you right there, and then we'll go to Phil Rath. Becky, you might still be on mute, but if you can come off mute, you have the floor. And if not, Phil, we will go to you while we wait for Becky.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, go either way. Sorry
okay.
about that.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Becky.
Yeah, go ahead. Becky, please.
Okay. Yes, my name's Becky Rapp. I'm a San Diego resident and a public health educator, and I am here today to speak to the marijuana applicant with the proposed location at Kettner Boulevard. I'm concerned about this project. It's going to be heard next week at hearing officer on January 25th. The planning group did vote on this project several months ago, but it was before any cycle reviews were in place. And the item should have been open for discussion, I believe, but not really voted on, as not all the proper documentation was provided by city staff. So one very important aspect of the report is the traffic study. This project is located on a busy street with limited street parking due to the location of the project. The applicant is not required to provide any on-site parking, but no on-site parking at a retail marijuana outlet will undoubtedly create traffic hazards. So I just encourage you to investigate the cycle reviews, as when the applicant presented, they did say that they were confident they'd meet all the findings, but I do think it's important that the planning group take the time to study the reports and evaluate and make a decision based on facts, not just self-reporting. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Becky. And Phil, over to you. I believe you represented that applicant, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's always a happy coincidence when Becky and I are on the same page. It doesn't happen very often. So thank you, Becky, for that lead in. My name is Phil Rath. I last saw you all in July. I represent the applicant for the cannabis outlet that's proposed for Kettner Boulevard. Many of you will remember reviewing that. I'm really here to tie up a loose end that I feel like I owe you all some information on. I'm not going to respond directly to all of Becky's comments. All that information is available now in the hearing officer agenda that'll be coming out. We are having a hearing officer agenda item next Wednesday. But what I wanted to talk to you about was when I was here, the motion was 5-3 by your group to support the facility, which we greatly appreciate. One of the conditions on that was that you asked that the project be conditioned to only allow the parking to be used for customers. Becky is correct. No parking is required on this site at all because of the new city parking requirements, but we are providing 5 stalls. At that time, I made a mistake, and that's what I want to come back and clear up with you. I led you to believe that we were okay with that condition of it being only for customers. My client was traveling at the time, and when he got back, he and I talked, and we realized that that was a mistake on my part. And I want to explain why, and why we're not going to be able to comply with that request from your group, and of course, get your input. I think it's important that groups get this feedback loop. I've been on a planning group, and I remember I would just make recommendations, and they would maybe get followed, maybe get ignored, and no one ever really told us what happened. And I just think that's unfortunate. So we're here to really just inform you and get your feedback. Unfortunately, while it's definitely our goal to use the parking for customers, that's absolutely the best thing to do with that parking. We do have some specific activities that will necessitate employees using the parking from time to time. For example, we do have cash that leaves the facility to go to the bank and make change. We have product unloading. It is a mostly cash business, so cash accompanies that sometimes. We also will run deliveries to and from customers that are off-site. We really don't want to expose our employees to having to run across Kettner to the parking garage or to a public parking stall. We think that that's less safe than it really should be. So we're not going to be able to accommodate that request. And again, my apologies for not making that clear when we had our meeting. So hopefully you all understand, but I felt like it was important to express that. I'm joined today by the applicant, who will be the operator, Rocky Goyle, who has a lot of experience with these facilities, and happy to answer your questions if you have any questions about why this might be.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. This portion of the agenda for non-agenda public comment doesn't really dictate for like discussion and question and answer, but potentially when we slide into new business at the end of the agenda, if you guys are willing to stay, and we can maybe have a discussion there about how to deal with that information. But as this is the non-agenda comment, I'd say thank you for coming and clarifying that, and then we'll move forward to Byron before we get into our government reports. Byron, you're up.
Good afternoon. My name is Byron Ware. I'm a longtime resident of Point Loma, Ocean Beach, and the Midway area, former city council member. First, I want to thank you all on the planning group for your dedication and serving as the advisory group for land use for this area. You're on this group at a critical point. I had the opportunity years ago to serve on my community planning group and updated our community plan, and you guys done a great job with your community plan a few years ago. I'm here to talk about some major issues in and around the sports arena project. I, of course, supported the Midway Rising Group and supported all the actions that are going to lead to the redevelopment there. I would like to suggest that your planning group consider developing an early strategic framework of priorities for the sports arena site based upon your approved community plan and the actions taken by the city council as part of their approval of that project. Specifically, item 1, traffic improvement projects. I suggest an early and a long-term action plan on those different projects. For example, there was made a modification of the idea of doing more east-west streets to create a grid pattern in the community. Also, obviously, the I-8 Interstate 5 interchange is important in terms of a long-term project. There also needs to be a transportation mobility network that would involve special shuttles or also a walkable to get people from Old Town Trolley over to the new sports arena site. And that needs to be part of that early projects that we can get going with. It's going to undoubtedly involve some kind of a bridge over the end of Interstate 8. I think it's Camino del Arena, whatever street that would be, leading into the community. Other links as well, number 3, which would connect to the project to Liberty Station and over to Mission Bay, need to be on the table. Number 4 is early discussion with San Diego Unified School District. We have a new school board member for potential incredible expansion of the Dewey Elementary School and significant capital dollars. We just passed the $3.4 billion school bond. There's an opportunity for additional capacity as well as joint use recreational fields to solve some of the recreational needs in the community for not only the youth, but the adults as well. Number 5, I know this group has been monitored by numerous elected officials at the federal, state, and local level. I would recommend early discussions with the SANDAG and all the elected representatives to start thinking about a budget at the federal and state level as to what kind of dollars can come into this community, given the significance of what's about to happen in the next 5 years. We're going to need some help because we are accommodating this additional housing. Number 6 is potential collaboration with the Point Loma community. There was leftover when I served on the council. The state of California withdrew the California 209, which was the highway that is Rosecrans, basically from the end of the freeway all the way out to Cabrillo Monument. There is money in that fund that is unspent for potential right-of-way improvements. And there could be a tremendous gateway project that would benefit not only people coming into Point Loma, but people going into the Midway community. You could work with the local planning group over in Point Loma on that project. I also recommend that your group seek public input as part of your process to update. I think it's on your agenda today, but it's item 5B on the agenda, your DIF, the whole DIF program. I don't know which project, all your capital improvement projects. You need to be taking that into consideration, what's about to happen, and update and fine tune that list. So those are some of my suggestions. I just wanted to offer them at the 35,000 foot flight over the area and get you thinking about those. And I would suggest that you guys come back and talk about this in the next 60 to 90 days and try to hammer priorities early in the process so that that can go on to the elected officials and we can start done.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Byron Ware. I should know former city council member Byron Ware. You've got some experience, so thank you for sharing it with us. Any other non-agenda, emphasis on non-agenda, public comment from the audience here today? Judy, yeah?
DK, I would like to ask Byron, first of all, thank you for that information. Do you have that in some kind of a list format of those items that you could maybe shoot out to DK that he could just send to us?
I'll
just the list?
Yeah, sorry,
That would be
Judy.
great.
We're not doing questions right now. This is just comments.
No, I'm not asking a question. I'm just asking if he has that, his list in a written format that he could send to you that you could give to us. I thought it was good information.
I concur. And yes, I will get with Byron and sort that out.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Byron. Thank you, Judy. All right. Not seeing any other public comment. We'll move forward in the agenda to government reports. I'm excited to, I think, welcome for the first time. Well, no, actually, first we'll go to the mayor's office. Excuse me. I do see Kohta here. Kohta, welcome back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
The mayor's office.
Good to see everyone. Kohta Zaiser, Deputy Director of Community Engagement for Mayor Gloria. The big news coming out of our office is the State of the City address that we gave last week. This was Mayor Gloria's third State of the City address, but it was our first one in person. The first theme that we gave back in 2021 was that the state of the city was fragile. The next year, we said that we were ready. And this year, we believe that we are rising. We are making strong investments in a lot of our top priorities, but with the full understanding that we have a long, long road still ahead. So a fine balance between a sobering reality with some hopeful optimism. We focused our state of the city on 4 key priority areas: homelessness, housing, public safety, and infrastructure. In the infrastructure space, we announced that this fiscal year, we will repave up to 283 miles of roads. This is a 40% increase from the last 2 fiscal years each. With new parks, we'll be opening 9 new parks and improve 15 more. I'm sorry, this was last year. We opened 9 new parks and improved 15 more. In 2023, we are expected to complete 13 new parks and improve 18 more for a total of 55 parks over the course of the last 2 years. Regarding public safety, the city of San Diego is actually one of the few large cities nationwide that actually saw a decrease in crime. We saw overall crime go down 7.5%, property crime down 9.7%, and then the most serious violent crimes went down by 13%. Our biggest issue, though, with public safety is still the fact that we are understaffed in our police department, and we have been for quite some time. So we have had a fully funded police department the last 2 fiscal years. We plan to do so again this year and next year. We invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into recruitment and retention. And just recently, we came to agreement with all of our unions representing public safety first responders to give them a 10% increase or pay raise this year. Regarding fentanyl, that was also a big piece of our state of the city, was that fentanyl nationally and by the federal government is not a Schedule 1 drug, meaning that marijuana is deemed more dangerous than fentanyl and methamphetamines. That's just not the case. That's crazy. And so last year, late in November, Mayor Gloria signed an executive order directing SDPD to prioritize and enforce and investigate further fentanyl cases. Our biggest issue is making sure that the district attorney and our state folks are taking those cases and those charges seriously, so those folks are staying off the streets for longer. Regarding homelessness, in 2022, we got 2,200 individuals off of the streets. Many of them went into sober living or transitional housing, but a majority of them, over 1,900, moved fully into permanent supportive housing, essentially ending their homelessness. And while that number is great, I think all of us can agree that it's not very visible on the ground. That's because what we saw from the Regional Task Force on Homelessness was that for every 10 individuals that we get off the streets, another 13 fall onto the streets. And so San Diegans just cannot keep up with the rising cost of housing in San Diego. The last piece and where we closed it on was all related to housing. We touted the Midway Rising and the 4,000 units that will be built there. And in 2022, we permitted 5,000 new homes with another 7,000 currently in the pipeline. And then he actually signed an executive order that night directing our development services department to prioritize and expedite any project that comes in with 100% affordable housing. So a permit process that typically took 6 months to a year will now be done in just 1 month. And the implementation for that, I believe, is March 13th. So DSD and all of its relevant departments are working to craft an implementation plan on that. And then the other piece unrelated to the state of the city that I wanted to talk about was a request that came from a property owner in the sports arena area, was echoed by SDPD, and city attorney did review this as well too. But we'll be installing signage related to vehicle habitation over on Hancock and Kurtz. This is as we gear up for VHO enforcement to begin once again. We want to make sure that folks out there understand that this is not legally allowed, as well as point them to resources and services with safe lots where they can take their vehicles and park without fear of tow or citation. So I'm working with our transportation department right now on installing that signage. Hancock and Kurtz has always been kind of the big area to flag. I'm curious if this group has other areas where that signage would be beneficial. It's essentially a, if you see signs that say, no skateboarding or, no biking on the boardwalk, or whatever it is, it's similar to that, but VHO, it'll cite the municipal code, as well as resources for Jewish Family Service, and where folks can go get the help that they need, and, park their cars safely. And this is in anticipation of us gearing up for VHO enforcement soon as well. Those were all the updates I had, but I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. I see your hand is up. And also, Jason, for the record, I should note that Kathy is with us, Rebecca is with us, and Chuck is also now with us. So we've got our board. Kathy, hello. Lovely to see you again. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be back. Glad I'm finally able to reactivate. So hi, Kohta, Happy New Year.
New Year.
Quick question for you on the vehicle habitation. There's signage that's currently up on Kurtz and Hancock that explains or that identifies that habitation, overnight habitation, is not permitted. So I guess I'm a little bit confused about what additional signage needs to happen since the signage is already there.
I was unaware that signage was already there. Officer Surwilo and I were talking, at the end of 2022 about this. And so I'd be curious what signage is there. I know there was one sign that was out there, but it cited the wrong municipal code. And when I sent that over to the city attorney's office, they said that shouldn't be up there. So we may be talking about the same signage, but I'll send you what the mock-up I had was, and then what the picture that I got from a resident about existing signage in the space, which the city attorney told me was the wrong municipal code. So we may be talking about the same thing, but if there's other signs out there, I'd be curious what those look like as well.
Because I know that there was, once the ordinance was actually put into place, there was signage erected, so, and that's the signage that I'm aware of,
Okay.
so.
It's deep in my inbox. I'll send you what I have right now that somebody said was out there.
Okay.
But I will also say that at the end of this month, we're opening up the Rose Canyon Safe Parking Program over by the Costco on Morena Boulevard. That is the first safe parking program in District 2, which I know has some of the worst vehicle habitation issues. And I think I said previously in other meetings that as we gear up to, basically start enforcement again on VHO, this has been inactive for, 3 years, coming up on 4 years or so. It's a long time. So you have thousands of people that could potentially fall into full-on homelessness if we just go right back to it, right? So with the expansion of more safe parking, more resources where they could go to, I know that, we want them off the streets, but we still want them to get them housed and getting the help they need, right? So I know this group has been incredibly patient. But yeah, Kathy, I'll connect with you and show you the sign that I have right now and see if we're talking about the same thing.
So what's the timeline on getting the new signage erected and getting the VHO enforcement underway? I mean, are we talking 30 days? Are we talking 6 months?
Yeah, so transportation is doing the mock-up of the signs right now. And once SDPD and the city attorney give the green light, they've given green light to the conceptual design. But once they say, okay, this looks good, those signs can be up, soon. So I'm hoping within the month, those signs will be up after we go through that review cycle. Once we do that, and once we get the Rose Canyon shelter or the safe parking program up and running, which right now is tentative at the end of this month, but the city attorney said we may have to go to council, which I don't know how long that's going to push us back. We're pushing to get this open without council action. I think we have a good idea on that. Once we have that, I think we can seriously start discussing enforcement being reinstated.
Okay. One last thing on that. You asked for other locations. Greenwood Street, behind the Denny's and over to Hancock, where it used to be a Sheraton. It was over there. That whole area behind the old Mexican restaurant and Denny's back there, that street is always heavily impacted. And then I guess I don't want to take over everything, but I'm wondering if you know anything more, or who we could talk to who would know anything more about that Sheraton that has been turned into some kind of a processing center that's back there behind Denny's, and also the Wyndham, because we were told those were going to be short-term facilities, and it's been I know it's been well over a year.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a lot, like last summer, right? Is that the same location? I know we really kind of dove deep on that one. Okay, let me check in with our Office of Immigrant Affairs and see what's going on here. I believe what we decided or found out last time was that it was a federal program. So I don't know if we're beholden to whatever the federal government is wanting to do with this space, but let me check with our Office of Immigrant Affairs and see where that is right now.
Okay, great. I'd appreciate it. I mean, that's private property, and I understand that the federal government's involved, but those are huge eyesores in and walled off areas of the community. Thank you, and I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Todd, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, DK. Kohta, I've got a question. Do you have any idea the percentage of the homeless people coming in from out of town?
I don't have actually, yeah, I think it's 3 out of 4 people on the streets right now are San Diegans born and raised. So that leaves 1 in 4 potentially that come in out of town.
25%.
That was from the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. I feel like that was like 2021 or 2022 maybe. We're about to do our next point in time count, which is that kind of a general census essentially of our unsheltered population. That's happening next Thursday, where we'll get the latest round of data and numbers of of what the demographics look like of folks that are on our streets. But I think 3 out of 4 unsheltered people in San Diego are San Diegans, born and raised.
Okay, my other question is, I think you answered part of it, where the homeless parking, safe parking facility would be located? Where was that again?
It's yes, it's Rose Canyon. It's a city-owned operations yard right now. Let me pull it up. It's
I know where it is. I used to off-road there when it was legal.
yeah, you know where it is. I think it's like 3775 Morena Boulevard.
Right.
So on your way to that Costco or on your way to that Balboa Avenue trolley stop.
My other question is, where is the overage going to go when people find out they can safely park there and it's full?
It's a good question. You do have to be enrolled in that program. And so if that place is capped out, there's 3 other safe lots over in the Claremont, Kearny Mesa area and Mission Valley. So Rose Canyon's 24 hours. So you're not going to have ingress and egress out of there constantly, you know, at 6 a.m. when everybody gets kicked out. Mission Valley is also 24 hours. And then there's 2 over by Montgomery Gibbs Airport over on Arrow Drive and Balboa. Those are both larger lots. Rose Canyon is probably going to be one of the smaller ones. It's maximum of 60. And they're starting off when we go fully operational with about 30. And the reason we might have to go to council is because we want to get it all the way up to 60. And so they're deciding that right now. All the other lots are 60 and 60 at Arrow and Balboa. And then the Mission Valley one is 86 spaces.
So you decided that all these should be within the city's area, easy access for them to get back into the city for whatever they need or don't need to get into. Why isn't this designated somewhere way out in the East County, away from private residences, everything? I mean, because the closer it is to the city, the more the overage is going to impact the city, because it's going to happen. And there are going to be people that want to go along with the rules. And it's all the same guideline with people going to facilities. They don't want to do their own rules. They want to do their own rules, but there's no rules. Yeah.
We found that a lot of folks who go to these safe lots are families. They're people who are, in the community. They're residents who they're usually homeless for the very first time. They have kids, they have work, they have school to go to. They are still members of the community. I know what you're saying about the folks who constantly decline services. They're not going to go to a safe lot anyway. But when you have that safe lot option, when you have a place that they could go to, but they refuse, you're able to come in with the enforcement piece. And that's this carrot and stick approach. I get it that maybe some of the folks on Hancock and Kurtz, those people who have been there for a long time, they may not accept services there, may not go to the Rose Canyon safe lot. But when you have the option and they refuse, then you can begin that enforcement. We are doing egregious violations right now. So significantly expired tags, severely abandoned RVs or anything like that, or folks who are significantly blocking the public right of way. I live in North Park, and so some of the bridges crossing the 805, you can't even walk on the sidewalk there.
I've seen them,
Tens. I know Hancock and Kurtz is the same way. When I'm driving out of OB and I pass that back area, I see that. So I get what you're saying about, these folks who are going to refuse, but if they refuse, the enforcement piece can be a lot stronger when we have the alternative for them.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Todd. Judy?
Yeah, a lot of my questions have been answered and asked and answered. So thank you so much, Kohta, for your time. I have a question about, is there a map that you can send us that shows the designated or suggested locations for these signs to be erected?
Yes. Yeah, I had Officer Surwilo craft them for me. I
would really like to see that. And thank you. And does that include, is there signage on Channel Way, which is right behind our community, our senior community? We're Hancock, and then it runs into Kurtz. And then right behind us to the other direction there is Channel. There's a lot of, that's an ongoing mess over there. And, aware of that one. I mean, it's right out his property there.
Yeah, I believe
that's
Channel.
Really
Yeah, I believe Channel Way was on the original list. We had like 6 or 7 different locations along Hancock. But yes, I believe Channel Way was one of the other ones there as well.
Okay.
I know that area is kind of tucked away a little bit.
Yeah,
but
and you know, as soon as they're, you know, as soon as they're shuffled out, they just turn around the next day and come back. And then there is an ongoing problem in the parking spaces along Sports Arena. In particular, right in front of, let's see, there's I believe it's a Sherwin-Williams Paints and a veterinarian's clinic. There are parking spaces, which we want to keep because we need them desperately, but I walk right now all the time. And I can tell you that there are people sleeping in cars along there on a regular basis because they'll clean them out, they'll move away, they'll come back, and you know, so it's uncomfortable because, you know, some of them are kind of creepy, you know. But they really, you know, and they leave a mess. And then on that road, maybe somebody else on this call knows the name of that road, that when you turn Sports Arena next to the Home Depot, that road that goes back and connects with Midway. Well, I don't know the name of that. We have an ongoing problem there, and we've addressed it. We addressed it back in like 2016 or so, 17 for a short while. There are a lot of, they are privately owned vehicles that are being used as commercial vehicles. And most of them are trucks, and they say hauling and all that kind of stuff. They take up valuable overnight parking for residents. Even though it's kind of far for us, sometimes that's, you know, those are the only spaces, but also there is a very big accumulation, an ongoing problem with those owners and the people that work for them. You know, I guess they call them day laborers. But, you know, they're not licensed. They're just there. They get in vehicles, and I know when I walk to Home Depot or Target, which I'm doing a lot, it would be so much faster to just go down there, but it's really uncomfortable. And they block the sidewalk. They leave a really nasty mess. I've spoken, probably it's been about a year since I had a conversation with one of the crew from Home Depot that they go around in their carts and clean it up. And, you know, they're disgusted by it. I know we tried to get that changed where there's no commercial vehicles parking there. I'm not sure if anything, you know, what can be done. I would think something could be, but I don't go there at night. I don't even walk down that road during the day anymore. It's just, you know, really creepy with all those trucks, and they've got their music sometimes, having dance parties out there. I mean, you know, this is not Mexico. I mean, I understand we have a lot of fun sometimes too, but here, you know, but on an ongoing basis, I would really like to see if there's something we can do to stop the commercial vehicles along there overnight that are taking up spaces.
So commercial vehicles on Kemper, right around the Home Depot area generally.
Yeah, it's that street that runs right next to Home Depot and connects Sports Arena and Kemper, and
Midway,
Midway.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. Don't see any additional questions for Kohta, so Kohta, thank you. If anyone does have additional questions or comments or you know, any sort of communications for Kohta, would you mind like just dropping your email and contact info in the chat? And we can follow up with you. Obviously, you can always route those inquiries through me as well. I keep in touch with Kohta quite closely. So with that being said, thank you.
DK, this is Jim.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Can I just jump in quickly here about the areas that Judy's talking about?
Yeah, I want to try to focus on questions for Kohta at the moment, just so we can keep moving. But yeah, go ahead, keep it tight.
Yeah, I want to add something to his list.
Sure.
It's Kemper Street and Fordham.
Correct.
And then on Channel Way, there was some discussion about commercial vehicles. There are more than a dozen large vans on Channel Way that belong to a local business that take up dozens of parking places. and they don't move. They are just there. So if somebody could check in on that, it would be great. And what it does is create a blind intersection where Channel Way meets Jupiter Street.
It's funny that this is the subject. I actually walked that loop last night, getting ready for this conversation today. So yes.
Okay. So that's it for
I'll underscore
okay.
what Jim and Judy are saying there, because that is on my list as well.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. So
right.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that being said, thank you, Kohta. We will move on to Council District 2. We do have a new representative. Randy Reyes is with Dr. Jen Campbell's office. So I'd like to say thank you, Randy. Welcome to your first ever Midway-Pacific Highway Community Planning meeting.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Randy Reyes. I'm the community representative for Point Loma and Midway with Councilmember Campbell's office. I'm just making my rounds. Since there was no meeting in December, I wasn't able to join this meeting, but I'm here today to introduce myself. I don't have many updates at this time, but it's a perfect way to start to introduce myself with you guys. So the first update that I have is just the council member committee assignments for 2023. So for the 74th council, she was assigned to 3 committees. She's a chair of the Community and Neighborhood Services Committee, which is a new committee that council created this year, separating it from public safety. She's a member of the Environment Committee and a member of the Public Safety Committee. So those are 3 committees that she'll be working on this year. And then the second update I have, we will be doing a State of the District. It's going to be in February. There's no date or more details at this time, but once the information becomes available, I'll be sure to share with you guys. And that's all for me. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. And I'll put my contact info in the chat as well for future reference.
Awesome. Thank you, Randy, and welcome. I have a couple questions, but I'll go to the rest of the board first. Anyone has questions for Randy? Seeing none. I did just want to ask a quick follow-up. You said Neighborhood Services is a new committee that exists in City Council now?
Correct. The Community and Neighborhood Services. So the Public Safety Committee used to be Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods. They separated the two, so now it's Public Safety as a committee, and then Neighborhood or Community Neighborhood Services as a second committee. Community Neighborhood Services focuses more on the community neighborhoods aspect of things, like the title suggests. So things like libraries, parks and rec, child and youth success, code enforcement, events, veterans and military services, that all falls underneath the Community Neighborhood Services. While public safety, which the council member also now sits on, is a little bit more focused towards things like firefighter, police, Homeland Security, and all those other items that are more in terms of like safety concerns.
Got you. Thank you for clarifying that. I must have missed that announcement, which is embarrassing because I usually pay attention to those. But I suspect that because of what you said, the Community and Neighborhood Services Committee is all about, you'll be hearing from us quite a bit. So get comfortable. Please don't leave us. That is my only real clarification question for you for now. I'm seeing nothing else from anyone else. We'll say thank you one more time to Randy. We'll move on to Casey Snell, who's here from the Housing Commission in lieu of Lisa Jones. Hello, Casey.
Hi, everybody. So I'm here just to give the monthly update on Rosecrans and the harm reduction shelter. Sorry, I have so many screens. Where was I? Okay, so I just wanted to give an update that the harm reduction shelter is at maximum capacity. All 44 beds are full. For Rosecrans, we're at 98% capacity. So I call that we're basically full, because you have a few people leave every day and then they're full, they get filled the same day. So that means 147 actually of the beds are occupied. So out of the 150. As far as where folks are coming from for Rosecrans, 70% of the folks being referred in continue to be from the Midway area. So still very strong there. Now that's the overall percentage from the date that the shelter opened. September 12th through the data runs through January 17th. So 70%. So we've had 329 Midway residents that have entered the shelter. I know what we have just started recently reporting out on exits from the shelter. So where is that? Okay, right here. So since September, since the shelter opened, 10 clients have exited to a permanent housing destination. I believe this was I apologize. I know Lisa has since come in between the last time I was here, so I'm not sure how much detail we went into, but I believe there was a request for how many folks were returning to the street. And I apologize if that's not exactly what you asked for, but I have that 35% so 85 clients have exited the shelter on their own accord and exited back to the street. So it's not surprising it happens, especially when people are entering shelter for the first time. It may take them several times until they're comfortable in being in the congregate environment. And I believe, let me just check, those are my only updates. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try my best to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. No questions for me, but if anyone else from the board or the public has a question for Casey, now would be a good time. All right, seeing none, yeah, we'll say thanks one more time. I don't see anyone from the Airport Authority or the County Board of Supervisors. I don't see Cole Reed from Toni Atkins' office, but I do see Margaret Doyle from our new Assembly member, Tasha Boerner Horvath. That is Assembly District. Is it still 78, 76, 77?
We're 77.
77. Awesome.
Yes.
Welcome, Margaret. Thanks for joining us. We've not, just for context, everyone, remember, we've done redistricting. We have new lines. We've got new representation. So Tasha
Okay.
Boerner Horvath is our state assembly person.
It looks like Cole is here.
Oh, Cole is here?
Yeah,
Oh my
he
goodness.
was.
Oh, I see you right there. Hiding out.
Yeah, I'm
Welcome.
here. I'm happy to let Margaret go first, though, since she's brand new.
Yeah, why not? Since we've already spiked her adrenaline, Margaret, we'll keep you on the hot seat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Go right ahead. Tell us what we need to know about this new assembly district.
So our district is really fun. It's kind of like Chile or California, honestly. It's very long and skinny. I'm up in Carlsbad right now in our district office. And we have all of the coastline all the way down through Coronado. And then we continue on to the border, but only in the water, because that makes sense. So very fun, very unique. Really excited because Tasha's from Encinitas, born and raised. So she's very familiar with North County, but this is a whole new ball game for us. So we're very excited. Tasha started on the Planning Commission in Encinitas. So this is kind of a fun little full circle moment for us. Yeah, we're here. Anything you have related to the state, any questions, concerns, any bills you're tracking, you come to me for that. I am always available. In terms of a report, I actually have something for once. Tasha has already introduced 2 bills in the 2023-2024 session. One of them is a pelvic floor physical therapy insurance coverage bill. So that has to do with like women's reproductive health care after you give birth. It just makes pelvic floor therapy standard of care, because right now it's not standard, but there's lots of research that says it's very beneficial after giving birth. And then the second bill is probably a little more relevant to this group here. It is a blue carbon projects bill for blue carbon capture. She's working with the port on that one, and Wild Coast, I believe, is a co-sponsor. So that would just, reading my notes here because it's all very sciencey. It is for new projects in coastal lands. I'm trying to just like say this in English. To make sure that you have blue carbon capture, just to kind of see how we can go with blue carbon. Please don't ask me what blue carbon is. I know it has to do with like seaweed. It's a lot of science and I'm not a science person. But yeah, I'll go ahead and drop my email in the chat. I am happy to answer any questions you have except about blue carbon, because I don't know.
Awesome, but you do know who does know, right? And we can ask you that question. Oh,
absolutely, 100%.
There we go. I don't have any additional questions at the moment. If anyone else from the board does, now's a good time. I will, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, some of what Byron had mentioned earlier has also been on my mind as far as how we can leverage our local, state, federal representatives for all the different dollars that are out there. So at some point, I think either myself or this group will be in touch with your office with some of that.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, that's more of a heads up than a direct question. So that being said, yeah, Cole, thank you for being patient and apologies for overlooking you, but welcome back.
No worries. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to split my update into two separate sections today. So as Margaret mentioned, the legislature, we started session on January 4th. It's brand new. The governor's already introduced his first budget proposal on January 10th. And the main objective of this budget this year is to offset a likely deficit that our state will face. So based off the latest projections that I've seen from the Legislative Analyst's Office, that's looking at $18 billion. The governor's office estimates that the deficit could be $22 billion, but this is all subject to change based off of economic conditions. So the pro tem has made a response to the governor's budget. She sees it as an important first step to crafting the overall budget, which is due June 15th. And the key goals from Senate Democrats this year is to strengthen the middle class, support people who are just struggling to make ends meet, and setting up our state to mitigate the impacts of climate change. The next point I want to make is just regarding atmospheric river storms. So as we all probably know, it's been really rainy in the state for the last 2 weeks. So I just want to highlight some of the efforts that at least the state has done on our end to address the extreme precipitation event. So on January 4th, the governor did proclaim a state of emergency, which allows the state to coordinate more effectively with the federal government, local and tribal agencies. In terms of the state agencies that have been a part of this whole response effort, those are going to be the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, also known as Cal OES, the CHP, Cal Fire, Caltrans, the Department of Social Services, and the California Conservation Corps also deployed a lot of their personnel in the response effort, on top of the National Guard too. So there's been a lot of work, at least to secure funding from the federal government, to get those emergency dollars in and to get additional support from FEMA. And the governor also elevated the State Operations Center. He also elevated the State Flood Management Center to help manage our reservoirs that are experiencing a lot of, they're finally starting to refill after years and years of drought. And now we're finally getting towards the end of this this storm. The National Weather Service yesterday predicts that we've likely seen the worst of it, at least for now. It's tough to say what will happen in the weeks and months to come ahead, but with San Diego County in particular, we've already received 178% of our what we would typically get in a normal water year by now. So we've experienced more flood and more rain than we have in decades at this point. With that, though, I'm happy to take any questions or any input from anyone.
Thank you very much, Cole. Oh, Byron's got a question. Byron, hello.
Oh, hey, Cole, how are you?
Doing okay. How about yourself?
Good. I don't know if you were at the early part of the meeting. I served with your boss on the city council about 20 years ago. So we're good friends. We've always worked across the aisle with each other. So I just wanted to reiterate, I know the budget is going to be tight this year at the state level, but there are categorical funds within the state budget that they haven't been spent or extra dollars. We're looking for infrastructure money for the Midway Sports Arena area in the light of the fact that we're talking about major development, 4,000 housing units and plus. And if you could be on the lookout for opportunities and share with the senator, if there's some budgetary dollars that can go into some of our projects, we'd like to be on the radar. So I wanted just to alert you to that. And I'm sure DK will get back to you with a list of priorities based upon our community plan here.
That'd be great. I'll shoot my contact email in the chat box too. Feel free to keep me updated on this, and I'll coordinate with my district folks and folks up in the Capitol.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Byron. Thank you, Cole. Any other questions for Cole?
I might just have a quick comment, Cole. Just what the analysis was or the shortfall. I know maybe a year ago they were saying we have a $100 billion, what would you call it? Sorry, my brain farted writing all these notes.
Surplus, and now we've
Surplus, yeah, now we've swung to a $20 billion deficit. So that's a pretty big swing. What?
Yeah, that's a
Tax
huge,
revenues, I mean, that's after COVID and everything with the lockdowns.
that's a huge question on everyone's minds right now. So California has historically had a very volatile structure when it comes to how we receive revenues. And that's because we rely a lot on how we tax income, particularly with the capital gains tax. We tax capital gains just like regular income in our state, which means that during times when the stock market's doing really good, we tend to get large surpluses. But when the stock market's not doing too good, then we get large deficits. So that's the primary explanation behind why we're facing a deficit this year and why we had such a large deficit last year. I mean, a large surplus last year.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Cole.
Yeah, of course.
Seeing no additional questions for Cole, and not seeing Keo or Mara, I will now go to Muska from Naval Base Point Loma, who I believe is still here with us. Hello, Muska. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have any major updates other than the OTC Naval revitalization, of course, and some of these points I've already gone through last meeting, but just in case there were people that weren't able to attend the last meeting, I'll just go ahead and provide that update again. As many of you are aware, the Navy did hold its pre-proposal conference for interested proposers on December 7th of last year. We had more than 200 registered companies, and then 140 people were in attendance during the conference, and also 200 virtual logins that we had for people who logged in virtually to attend the conference. All the conference presentations are available now on the project site, and I will go ahead and leave the project site again, just in case if you wanted to take a look at that. In the project site, you will find the conference recordings. You'll see a message from San Diego Mayor. You'll see a message from the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for the Energy, Installation, and Environment, and then just overall presentations by our experts on the OTC NAVWAR revitalization and Navy's requirements. So those are all available on the website. Other than that, the two dates that are important now is on January 24th is the last opportunity for proposers to submit clarifying questions for the solicitation. So that day is important for the industry or interested parties who will go ahead and submit a RFQ. And then February 7 is the deadline for the proposal to submit their statement of qualifications. So those are the two big dates coming up for the project. Moving forward, once we do have the RFQs, we will narrow down that list to few proposals, and then it starts the RFP process. So a lot happening ahead, but that's all I have for today.
Awesome, thank you. I had one quick question. So you mentioned there were a good number of people who listed into that, I guess, form that you had a couple weeks back. I'm curious about the RFQ and the RFP process. So if someone does not submit their request for qualifications, do they have the ability to then subsequently continue to apply for the RFP? Or does that sort of like first, I mean, I guess I'm trying to get a sense for how many project applicants we're going to get, right? And so I'm assuming that if we look at the RFQ responses, we'll get a sense for what that looks like. Is that an accurate deduction?
That is accurate, because interested developers, they will have to submit a RFQ first, because we need to make sure that they are eligible to go ahead and proceed with the RFP process. So once we get the RFQs, we will have a good idea of how many interested parties are there.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was thinking. Do you have any sort of even ballpark sense right now as to how many submissions you might receive?
Not at this time, and that's something that our real estate team is keeping very close. So that information at this point is not available because the deadline, we haven't reached the deadline yet. But even if we do, I will find out if that's something that will become public knowledge. And if it does, I will definitely update you.
Okay, thank you. And last question on that topic is that the timeline in between the RFQ and RFP seems a little bit tight. So I'm assuming that most of the, I guess, rubric, if you will, for the RFP is already drafted. So I'm always interested in opportunity for community feedback and engagement. And I guess I'm trying to get a sense as to, is there anything that we can or should be doing as a planning group or as a community at large to continue to influence I guess, ultimately, the RFP that these different developers are going to submit? Or have we done our part by doing whatever we did in 2021 with that big document that we submitted?
There will be future opportunities for the community to provide more feedback. But as far as the RFP process goes, I don't have the complete details of how the team comes up with the exact and how they select the developers, but it is a very specific process. And that's spelled out for the real estate team. And that's something, there's a lot of, it's not very subjective. It's a very objective process because we want to make sure that we are fair to all the developers, and there are markers that they have to meet in order to be selected. But that's, again, if you go to our website, there is a presentation on that process and how it, the team will go about selecting the final developer.
Okay, thank you very much. That's for me. Any other questions for Muska? All right. Seeing none, we'll say thank you, Muska. Always a pleasure to see you. And
thank you.
We will, I think, move on to the next phase of our agenda, having completed government reports. We are lagging a little bit longer than I would have liked, but it's okay. We'll persevere. I think this is kind of my item, so I'll introduce this and kind of open it up. But really, what I usually we have information and action items. This time, I kind of edited it slightly and included the discussion component because I really do want to have as robust of a conversation as we're in the mood for here today about what we as a planning group should be focused on in 2023 as far as I see it. So I'd sent around a lot of sort of background reading and information. I don't expect that everyone's read it all. But if anyone has any questions about those items, I can answer things to the best of my ability. But ultimately, for two different reasons, the first item that we have here is the Council Policy 600-24. I put updates and implications because I think we've talked about this a fair amount, but this year is the year that it kind of takes effect. In September of 2022, City Council finally, officially updated Council Policy 624 and 609. As you all know, those are the city, ordinance components that dictate what planning groups are and how we function. So honestly, the vast majority of the changes are small and sort of I wouldn't say ticky-tack, but they're minor in their approach. They speak about things like including renters and sort of diversifying across property owners, residents, and renters and things. And for the most part, I think we as a planning group are in concurrence with that. I think, or at least the spirit of these updates in the first place. I think the big thing to keep in mind is that as a function of these council policy updates, every single planning group, all 42 of us, are required to resubmit our bylaws for approval by the city council by December 31st, 2023. So we've got an entire year to ultimately submit these things, but I don't see any point in waiting until the end of the year to start this thing rolling. I've sent around our bylaws a couple different times for folks to review. I have a couple different suggestions about how we could maybe potentially make a couple changes, specifically around subcommittees and potentially meeting times, as well as, first of all, when subcommittees, whether or not to have them in the first place, which I'm in favor of, and then ultimately, I'd love to come up with some kind of consensus in a few months from now about, if we decide a committee needs to exist in the standing capacity, what the function of that committee is, what the focus is, how we move forward. A lot of what I think Byron had sort of said at the top of the meeting are issues that he and I have spoken of, or things that are on my mind, or things that I think just make sense, right? For where we are as a planning group, for where we are in our sort of community plan life cycle, if you will. We've updated our community plan in 2018, Measure E, Measure C. I think we're very much in a space now as a planning group, and I think as a community where we're ready to execute. I don't think that there are too many other uncertainties. Obviously, there is some pending litigation around Measure C, but that's not something we have the capacity to update as a planning group or to influence even. And so I really want to try to be deliberate and intentional about our time as a group, like I said, and what we focus on with respect to what we can influence, right? So whether that's, applying for Caltrans planning grants, which is something that I have some familiarity with, or whether that's, looking at parks and open space and trying to find ways to create funding mechanisms for all of that. I think I've, like I said, shared a lot of information, but that's kind of where my head's at. That's kind of how I wanted to open up this discussion. I'd love to hear from the board and potentially even our representatives or the wider community, folks who are in the audience, and kind of just get any sort of feedback or response or, sign of proof of life or anything, because I think, like I said, these are things that are really important for our planning group. And this is not obviously fun. This is, this is a volunteer thing that we do. We don't get paid for it. And so I don't want to, ask for people to do more than is appropriate. But at the same time, I think there's a lot that's in front of this community. And we have some level of roles and responsibilities in seeing how this community sort of develops going further forward. So with that, I'll take a pause. I'll kick it over to the group. Kathy, if you have any feedback or questions, always appreciate your insights. But yeah, kind of just wanted to start there and then keep going. Kathy, go ahead.
Okay, so on the 600-24, the bylaws updates, is there, I know that we have to submit and be reapproved. In the past, we've been provided by the city with a shell of the bylaws that we could use for guidance. And I know they're taking a much more of a hands-off approach at this point, and I guess it's more of a, hey, these are outside of the parameters of the city, so we're just gonna kind of put them over there. But for example, we currently have in our bylaws, you can serve up to 9 years or 8 years, whatever it is, and then you're supposed to take a year off. Are there any guidelines? Another thing, we say in our bylaws, you have to attend one meeting to be eligible to become a member of the board.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any guidance coming out of the city? I mean, can we just say, hey, you could be on the board as long as you want. Hey, you don't have to attend any meetings. Or, hey, you've got to attend 6 meetings before we'll let you be on the board. Is there any guidance coming from the city at all in terms of what they're going to look at and measure?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yes, I sort of spoke maybe too high of a level, but yes, there are resources that are available. There are, I believe there is still a bylaw shell that's applicable. I'll drop this link in the chat now. This goes to the city planning department's page where they have, it's called resources, planning group resources, but they've got some analysis of the changes between the previous version and the current version. Like I said, some of the honestly, like the most important changes from this update, there actually was one. So like, our planning group mandates at least one meeting of attendance before you are eligible for the board.
Mm-hmm.
There are other groups across the city that ask for 2 meetings, sometimes 3. And so one of the big things that, caused a lot of, I think, heartburn at CPC and the other places we've had this conversation was that this new bylaw update, or excuse me, this new council policy update actually reduces the amount down to 1, right? So that actually brings the rest of the city in line with what we've been doing this entire time.
Okay.
So even though that was something that was, like I said, dramatic and somewhat controversial in other communities, that is literally everyday business as far as we're concerned. So there's nothing to worry about. So in that regard, yes, Kathy, there are resources. I do think that we need to, and I don't think necessarily that this meeting here today is the avenue to really go line by line through our existing bylaws. There's a couple of sections that I do want to point out, but yes, there are resources, there is some direction. I've already reached out both to Council Member LaCava's office. So his office is the one who really led the charge to update these policies in the first place, as well as the planning department to, and I know the planning department is proactively doing this, but basically to solicit a presentation for this body about exactly what's changed, exactly what needs to happen, exactly, what we, basically the rubric that we're going to be evaluated on, right? We want to make sure we're for sure in compliance, and two, not, wasting time if there are resources that we can deploy, that we can leverage. So ideally we'll lock that in for February. They have not confirmed that to me. I've just reached out in the last week or two. And it was too tight of a turnaround for this meeting here today. But I feel loosely and largely, like I said, that the changes to policy update or council policy 624 that are most relevant for this group is the fact that we need to resubmit. And so, if we want to just resubmit our existing bylaws, that's fine. But I think if there's any sort of appetite for changing things, one thing that I feel strongly about is just increasing engagement overall. We've always had vacancies since I've been involved for almost 5 years now. I don't think that's going to change overnight, but I do know that we stand to see a lot of change in this community overall. And so to the extent that we can, basically measure twice, cut once, do this thing and not necessarily, I want to be proactive and think about adjusting our bylaws in a way that gives us capacity to address other issues as they come forward, as this community changes over the next 5, 10, 20 years. So that's kind of where I'm at. But yes, Kathy, the long answer to your short question was yes, there are resources.
Okay. Well, DK, the other thing that I want to mention and just throw out there we don't need to really discuss it today, but you and I have discussed one of the things that I'd like to see changed in our bylaws is allocating seats to the 3 categories of membership that we have in our community. So we've got residential, we've got property owners, and we've got business owners. And I think I don't think it comes as any great surprise to this group that over the years, especially in the past, it's been heavily a property and business owner populated group. Obviously, we don't have a very large, at this point in time, still a very large residential group, although that is going to be changing significantly as our community redevelops. I would like to look at, I don't know whether we're looking at, we want to look at 9 board seats or 12 board seats, but I would like to look at having, if we're 12, for example, 4 that are identified specifically for residents, 4 that are identified specifically for business owners, and 4 that are identified specifically for property owners, so that we continue to maintain the diversity of the board, the transparency of the board. I love the fact that we've got residents. We've never had, as many residents on our board as we have now, and have had over the last few years. But I think recognizing that we're going to be adding a lot more residential to the community, I think we need to be assured that we're maintaining the balance so that the different voices are properly reflected. This is never going to be Point Loma, where our community is almost exclusively residential. It is going to continue to be very much a mixed use community, which is great. And I think we need to assure going forward that we have the voices to reflect that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's very reasonable. One thing I want to do, so just for background, I'm taking notes on whatever suggestions folks have. I hope folks have suggestions or thoughts or even questions. What I'll do is I'll kind of draft like a little summary document, and either, I haven't decided if it makes the most amount of sense for just me to do this heavy lifting and come up with sort of like a summary outline for next month, or if maybe we have an ad hoc committee that really does spend the next few weeks looking at our bylaws and coming up with suggestions. I've sent them around a couple of times, but mostly just for information, not with any specific asks. But what I'd like to do today is walk away from this meeting with suggestions, just like what Kathy said, right? Considerations, concerns, thoughts, just things that we keep in mind as we go through this process. So yes, allocating specific seats for the different class of representative. I've got that noted down. I think that's something that's very fair and valid. If anyone else has anything else, now's the time, but I can also call on people directly. That's always fun. But otherwise, feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in. Judy, go ahead.
Hey, I was reading through some of this, not at a super high level, but just to give it a little perusal and see where we were going to be touching on it. And first, I would suggest that once we have, if we could get someone from the city to come and give us a presentation on the specificities of the changes and what's permitted, what's not, that would be a good idea. Once we have that, then I think we could, put it as an agenda item to really dig into it and give us a, some adequate time to go through and kind of think on each item and bring it together as we've done before. I think that was, would be good. I'm glad that did you say they are going to be here in February, or you're trying to get them here? The city?
I've invited them for February. They have not yet confirmed. So
Okay.
fingers crossed to get that. And I'll confirm with this group before then, obviously, if that's something that's doable, if we need to push it till March. But I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with
that. Would be good. Yeah. And then I was looking at the proposed changes. So as far as you are aware from attending the meetings that you attend to, is there any change in the city indemnifying members covering our proverbial butts if somebody sues us?
No, that indemnification is still there.
Okay.
The other two big, I guess if you could even say maybe potentially unresolved issues that CPC as a body, I think, basically decided to learn how to live with, was indemnification is still there. But the thing that the city has really retracted is the mechanism for what they call a no cost appeal. So this is not something that this group has had to deal with because we don't get project applicants, because we haven't done anything, at least in my time in the 4 or 5 years I've been here. But oftentimes for groups who do have project review or go through and they make a certain recommendation, in the event that a developer, for whatever reason, goes in a direction that a planning group is not comfortable with, the city has historically had a mechanism for planning groups basically to appeal decisions, right? And so and for free, no cost. So that's been rescinded. And that's something that a lot of
that's been rescinded, did you say?
That's been rescinded.
Okay.
So that's something that obviously I think, like I said, has caused heartburn in other places. It's not something that we've dealt with historically, but based on the fact that we know that there's development coming, that's a concern. And then the other big issue that was unresolved, which honestly, I strongly disagree with the bulk of the CPC who had this issue, because I don't think it's an issue. But within the overall bylaw shell, there is some language about term limits, obviously, in terms, I guess the criteria for fulfilling vacancies. So for example, Kathy technically termed out last year, but because we had vacancies and there was no other interest, she was able to sort of roll over on a 1-year basis. That is part of the historic bylaw shell, the current and the future bylaw shell. There was one point where there's a conversation about whether that time off. So so that's like for a vacancy, right? We were able to roll Kathy straight in for a vacancy. If there is not a vacancy, the amount of time, like almost like a cooling off time, for example, was 1 year before.
I remember that, yeah.
That's been extended to 2 years. And so there was some heartburn about, if you basically ostracize experienced members of planning groups from participating in this process for 2 years, like that's a problem. But I would really like to emphasize that for our group, which has more vacancies than anything else, having I'm sure Todd and Kathy and some of these folks who've been on this group longer than I have had come back, they would love for a 2-year cooling off period. I would love to be in a position where we have enough interest and participation in this group where we do have not contentious, but contested elections, right? We don't do that. We haven't done that. So those are the two big, I guess, not red flags, but just the sore points, from CPC. But frankly, neither one of those really is an issue that we've struggled with here.
No, and it would probably be a while, but I really appreciate that we have the mechanism to allow someone with deep knowledge base like Kathy, and we've had others who've come and gone because they bring a lot to the table. They have some understanding and knowledge that newer people don't have. You get a little of it over the years, and stuff, but there's still that deep knowledge about history that sometimes, not everything gets written down, not everything's recorded, and there's a lot of value in that. So, anyways, but, so I was curious because I did a couple of years ago when they had that supervisors meeting and it was online, I didn't ask questions, but I just observed, and I was really concerned about the indemnification going away and some of these other mechanisms that protect us because we're all serving as volunteers. And let me just go to one other thing and then let someone else have time. I was also reviewing the base document from the city. You accepted a job, you work with the city, right? Are you a SANDAG employee?
Me? Yeah, I do work at SANDAG, but the SANDAG and the city of San Diego are different.
Okay, so you're not technically a city employee.
Correct, and I never have been.
Okay, good. That's good. Yeah, I wasn't sure with your email. I'm reading that thinking, well, I hope that doesn't mean DK can't be here.
No.
But
I told them when I interviewed.
You're technically not city.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Just checking.
Don't worry. I'm not leaving anytime soon, Jude. I told them in my interview that it was imperative
That's
that I
good.
maintain my eligibility here.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions, other comments, any suggestions? Jason, I know you've been here for a long time. Amy, technically you are vice chair. Any questions, suggestions, thoughts about what we're thinking about, talking about here? I see Rebecca's hand is up. We'll take that for now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Took a minute to get in on the Zoom on my phone. Just Happy New Year. Nice to see everybody again. I missed out on that little piece because I came in a couple minutes late. So nice to see everyone again. And I just wanted to put out there, just in terms of logistics, I personally, enjoy this time and the space to have these meetings. But, if it's something that's coming down where we do need to have a different kind of engagement from the people in our community, I mean, just a real simple, not that I necessarily want to make this change, but making the meeting time in an evening or weekend time, if we need people that are more, like a renter in the community. Most people living in San Diego are, typically working pretty hard to make it happen here. So I don't know if, just as a real basic suggestion, if, having the meeting at maybe a more convenient time for the working folk, maybe that would help increase people wanting to participate more, because it is kind of a tricky time. I like it. This is a great time for me. So I would be shooting myself in the own foot, if we did change it, but that's just one of my suggestions, is maybe just making the meeting time more accessible for other folks. So that's it.
No, that's a great point. That's something that's crossed my mind. I've had to juggle a couple different things. I've been very fortunate that even myself, as someone who works full time, has been able to carve out this space, but it's a concern of mine. you know, and frankly, the vast majority, because I now with my current role and in other places, I do attend a lot of other planning group meetings, and they're mostly at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. You know, last night I was with the Torrey Pines Community Planning Group about a thing, and we went from 7 to 9 p.m. It's not ideal,
Yeah.
but it's a lifestyle that I think we've all largely, in some way, shape, or form, signed up for. Yeah, good suggestion. I got a note of that. Thank you, Rebecca. Kathy?
So I just wanted to comment on that. I mean, the reason that our time has traditionally been where it is because we have a lot of business people, property owners, business owners on the committee that don't live in Midway. And particularly if we end up going back to in person, it's really difficult. I mean, I'm up in North County. I will be there if we go back to in person during the work day, but I'm not going to come down to Midway at 7 o'clock at night. You know, and I realize that we've got renters and we've got other people, but one of the things that we've always known, we've tried all kinds of different times, but one of the things that we've always known is that for business and property owners, this is a time of the day where we're for the most part, we're in the community. We can be there, or we will make the effort to be there where we can't in the evenings.
I hope we don't leave Zoom. Zoom is, I mean, just for convenience sake, I'll just say that right there. Like, I hope it doesn't go back in person, because this does, I think, make it easier for everyone to participate.
Amen. I remember, I feel like we were nomads, really. You know, when I first started joining this group, we used to meet at this school right here across the street from me. Then we went to Urban Core, then we went to the brewery, and the brewery was great because they had beer after the meeting, but it was also terrible for all of the same reasons. It's a warehouse, right? That's not conducive. We don't even have, technically, a city facility in the community planning area boundaries that is like appropriate for most of these planning groups who do meet in person meet at libraries or city facilities. We don't have that. One thing, and this is off sort of topic, but for the Midway Rising group, like talking to them about a library, like creating a library as part of their thing, like if they're going to do all that stuff, we should have amenities. And it's like we would need either a privately owned public meeting space or like some city action over there. So yes, I also love Zoom. I'm not advocating for going back in person. I think we have higher levels of participation. But you know, sometimes we have to we're beholden to the law, right? So as long as we have this condition that allows us to meet virtually, I will continue to champion it. Other questions, other thoughts? Karen, one of the thoughts that I had for a potential committee, whether it's ad hoc or standing, is this is like a big hairy one, but something to do about homelessness, right? Like I don't think that we are like service providers in any way, shape, or form, but we do have, you know, the tiniest sliver of land use advisory authority. And so thinking about ways that we can use whatever recommendations or whatever mouthpiece we can use to make whatever noise in a more formalized way, like it's an option. I don't know if I want to chair that committee, if I'm being honest personally, but I think that kind of in the same way that Rebecca's saying, we should maybe consider moving to a time that is, you know, different. We should, I think, also be considering what are the needs of this community? How do we codify them? How do we define our intersection with these different needs of the community when it comes to land use specifically? And, you know, like I said, set us ourselves so that we have some capacity as an organization for the next few years, because nothing's changing overnight, but things are definitely changing. And I'd like to influence that as much as we can.
Well, when it comes to the subcommittees, is that something that we need to have in the new plan document that we send to the city? Do we need to have those listed out? I know we can have ad hoc ones, but do we need to actually come up with a list of subcommittees?
I don't know if we absolutely do, but one thing I've read, and the way this is my interpretation of the existing bylaws, I'm not a lawyer, but there's a line in the bylaws that speaks specifically about subcommittees. And it says in that the planning group has no standing subcommittees. So I don't know that we could initiate a standing subcommittee as long as that language is there. So when I'm talking about submitting new bylaws, I don't think that we necessarily need to draft out all of everything, but we for sure want to make sure that we don't preclude ourselves whether it's by, explicitly or sort of implicitly, that interpretation of what it means to have no standing subcommittees. I just want to make sure that we are clear and concise and give ourselves as much flexibility and as many tools as we possibly can. So yeah, short answer, I don't think we need to specifically say what we need, but I would rely on the city planning department and city attorney for ultimate clarification there.
My understanding of the document is that it's a document that puts our process of how we do things, how we move forward, how we operate. It's an operational document is what I see it as. So I personally don't think we would need to have, standing committees in that document, but we have a process for how we would assemble, how we would formulate committees. Is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding as well. And so, yeah, like I said, I bring it up because I think that we just want to make sure that we're very intentional as we do go forward. I don't want to just like copy paste the existing, update the date, and then find out that we've somehow, barred ourselves from doing anything really. I want to keep as much flexibility as we can. But that is my understanding. Yeah. Kathy, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to mention, and I know, Rebecca, you've got your hand up, but on the subcommittees as well as the ad hoc committees, I don't believe there's some planning groups have standing committees. Like I know Peninsula has a transportation committee that they've had for years, and it is an ongoing thing that they have. That's a standing committee. You can have a regular the difference between, as I understand it, between subcommittees and ad hoc committees is that a subcommittee has a different process in terms of notification, in terms of when they can meet, in terms of meeting minutes, in terms of process that is different from an ad hoc committee. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have, you don't have to name a committee. It doesn't have to be a standing subcommittee, but you could say, okay, we're going to create a subcommittee on redevelop, sports arena redevelopment, as an example. That could be a subcommittee, or it could be an ad hoc committee. The difference is how they operate. So you have to look at what those operational pieces are and what those requirements are. There's some things that you can do with an ad hoc committee that you can't do with a subcommittee, and vice versa.
Agreed. And I know, I believe I'll leave it then and say yes, there are discrepancies there that will be on the list of questions that the planning department or the District 1 office, whoever comes, I'll provide them with basically all the questions that we still have in ahead of time, so that it's included in their original presentation, because we just need clarification. So yes, Rebecca, thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem. Kathy, I appreciate you just kind of taking the time to iron out the differences between those. But just kind of piggybacking off of that, and I'm so sorry I didn't catch our former council member's name who joined us when he introduced himself at the beginning, and he had all those great bullet points to make. And I do think moving forward, because there is going to be so much change in our community, whether it's ad hoc or whether it is a standing subcommittee, maybe again, so DK, you don't have to do everything for us all the time, is maybe we can all, not reinvent the wheel, but look at some of these, basic committee, important, like a transportation committee, a public safety committee. Yes, the homeless committee that no one will want to be on and talk about it all the time. But maybe we can all at least give kind of like a ranked choice of different topics, so maybe we pick, like our top 3, you know, or we give 3 committees that we feel like our our planning board would be really, it'd be really useful for us to have these 3, 4, 5, whatever they are, committees, so that we can all kind of put in without it all being like, okay, everybody cares about, you know, the transient situation, so everyone's going to do that. So some sort of like ranked choice of committees. And that way we can start to see like, okay, what are the things that really people are passionate about and they want to get into the nuts and bolts in. And then again, having some people take some of the responsibilities with those committees, so you don't have to herd the cats.
Thank you for considering my time. I am a maniac and I love this stuff, so I'll do more than anyone needs me to do, I'll be honest. But yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think, like I said, I'm very keen and sensitive to overall engagement. The last thing I want to do is create, you know, some sort of black hole or void where we've created this thing that no one participates in or no one has any ideas for, or somehow becomes a burden or an obligation, right? Like I said, this is all volunteer based. So the issues that are relevant, compelling, like I just closed my window because the kids outside are playing. Like we got like my complex, we have a bunch of young families, and I'm sure that they are very concerned about a number of things, right? But I also know that parents with young children definitely don't have time at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So all that to say is we need to, in my opinion, identify and rank, however that comes together, the items and issues that are most relevant, most, I think, most compelling to our group, to our community, and then start to float the idea of what that participation looks like. I think, Kathy, I might not be right, but I think one of the differences, or definitely one thing I know about subcommittees and ad hoc committees, is you can, I think the chair or whoever's leading the group needs to be a member of the planning group directly, but there also is capacity for other community members who are not formally part of the planning group to then participate and have a voice in the overall process. So, you know, maybe our core meeting stays here at 3 p.m., but the different subcommittees that we initiate kick off at different times that are more advantageous or more flexible for other folks who do have concerns or passions or whatever. So that's a consideration as well.
Agreed.
Yeah, Judy, I see your hand just came back.
Yeah, you know, what do you think? Would it be helpful if we calendared a regular quarterly public meeting once every quarter and got the word out to the community, you know, finding a meeting place that, you know, but we've done it before. I mean, we've done it for, you know, when we've had city council members come and speak, we've done that. We have always had a good turnout. We've used the EF school. We've used, I don't know if the college is back as an option for something like that. Or that new bank. Chuck is no longer on the call. I don't see him, but you know, he had mentioned that the bank branch up here was planning to have that facility become a public meeting place. I walk by there all the time and I don't see anything going on. So, you know, but do you think that does anybody have any ideas about that? I mean, maybe if we planned a regular quarterly evening meeting and the people in the community had enough time, you know, in advance, that way they could get updates, you know, directly, they could ask questions. Maybe that would be a good way to involve more of the local community because we are unique. I attended a number of planning groups a long time ago, you know, kind of seeing how they do things and watching presentations. We're completely different than like La Jolla. We're completely different than everybody else. We are so unique. Everybody thinks they're unique, but we are unique. You know, I mean, seriously, we are really different than everybody else because of the mix. Our mixed use is completely different than everybody else's. And I think we probably have the best diversity representation of our community of any planning group, even though we always have trouble getting the new people to come in and, you know, once in a while. It's because we have a lot of renters. And as somebody alluded to earlier, I don't remember who said it, but, you know, in California, everybody's working really hard. I've been retired for a number of years. but technically I work full time. I have a business that I'm trying to, keep afloat. So, we all, everybody has things that you have to keep doing. And the families you mentioned, DK, young families don't, they're not going to get that involved, but maybe if they came to a meeting and heard what we're doing and what we've done, and they hear a need, maybe within their circle of influence between work and families, scouts, we'll find a few people that might want to get involved. And I think that as the community transitions, I think we'll always be as versatile, as diverse in our mixed use when you lay it out on a map. But I do see, ahead that our community membership, that is going to change. Could it be in 10, 15 years? Maybe, but we should start working on it now because it happens really fast. And I don't know, does anybody else have any thought about that? Do you think maybe that could be a good way to get word out in the community, get more activity? And anybody?
I like it. I feel like sometimes it's more collaborative when there's people actually sitting in a room and sharing ideas. I love Zoom, don't get me wrong, but I do feel like you get maybe a little bit different perspective, a little bit more collaborative effort from people when they're sitting actually across from each other.
I agree.
Yeah.
And, again, kind of, with the fella, somebody give me his name
His
so I
name's
don't have to
Byron.
call him the fella. Byron.
Yeah,
So
Byron
sorry.
Ware.
Thank you, Byron. It is that idea of, yes, getting the public involved, getting their comments. I mean, I'm sure, a lot of people are really wondering, okay, what's going to happen? How is this going to impact me? But I think also just looking at those different ways that we can engage them. So, maybe one of us posts on the different social Facebook pages, maybe somebody can go through social media, maybe somebody can, is, really active in their church community or at their school, maybe we can have kind of people going that digital media route to get the word out. And then maybe we can have people, kind of doing the face-to-face work too, to invite people.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. We do have a website. We do have a Twitter account that I think Kathy has access, but I think I am the only one who does some things there sometimes. And frankly, I keep the website updated with a new agenda always. But outside of that, I've not done a lot with it lately. Outside of that, we have a YouTube channel where I put the recordings of our videos. But yeah, I think whether it's a quarterly in-person meeting, whether there's, an increased or rejuvenated level of engagement that we can push out through social media. I think we always get a lot of attention from outlets that are local, like the OB-RAG or even Peninsula Beacon. So even advertising there. I spoke to Quentin earlier, and not to put a damper on all of this, but Quentin, like I said, is probably going to be stepping down, it sounds like, at the end of February. So he'll be here for February and then probably wind down. But he's got a coffee shop here in town that we can post a flyer in and keep that sort of regular just avenue of just, it's an open invitation, really. I think that at all times, in all things, we should be as collaborative and open as possible. So we've got some tools at our disposal now, but at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of value, Judy, in that suggestion. So thank you for that. Go on. You don't need to raise it.
Yeah, I something else, I forgot to mention this a little earlier in this conversation. And I'm kind of drawing a blank on it again. Wait a minute. Somebody said something that made me think, going back, on our agenda, we have all of these government entities that send a representative, on paper. And, back in, was it December or maybe November, October, one of October, November meetings, I think I'm not even sure we had, but maybe one out of all of those people, make a presence, but they started sending you emails for you to read. I personally feel like we should not accept that. If they would like to, send a summary, that's fine, but I feel like it's really important, and this goes back to what I think it was Rebecca just said, or Karen, maybe Karen, Karen said about, we're in person. Zoom has been as in person as we've had for going on 3 years now. So it's worked really well, but when these government agencies just send you, DK, an email to read to us, yeah, that's all good, but we can't ask them questions. And, just today was a good example how having that person there, one question makes them, brings up another question. And yes, it may take a little more time than we allot for, but I think there's a lot of potential we miss when we allow them to just kind of be
passive like that.
for lack of a better word. And I would like for us to communicate with them that, what, we know you're busy, we're all busy, but they're getting paid. That's part of their job. We're not getting paid. We're here as volunteers. And when I come and somebody's not here, it may not matter, but you know what? It might have mattered if they had been here and I had been able to ask them a question about something that was on the news or something. I don't know how anybody else feels, but I do feel strongly that they need to have a presence. They don't even need to stay for the whole meeting. Most of them leave after they have their word with us, which is fine. But, if they're here, sometimes we even ask them additional questions that come up in other conversations, and it's really helpful. Remember, and Kathy and Jason and Todd and Amy, you'll remember back when we were working on the plan update, Vicki White was here at every single meeting, and she stayed the whole time. And, we would have questions about the engineering review. We would have questions about the traffic. And she was able to, if she couldn't answer it, she was able to make a note, and then she always was able to get back to us. But we're not getting that same level of, I don't want to say lack of, it's not cooperation, but it's the communication. The communication.
Judy,
Totally lacking.
let me jump in here. The reason that Vicki White was here was because we were working on the plan update. They don't do that anymore. They've made it clear they're not going to do it. But I just wanted to point out that another reason to have the 3 o'clock meeting or a working business hour meeting is there's a higher chance that we're going to get
One of those times.
these. Now, sometimes there's a conflict, like, Kohta may have a meeting with the mayor that he has to be at in person or something. So you're going to have those, but we get a much higher, I can tell you from having been on the Torrey Pines Planning Board, which is a residential community with a 7 p.m. start time, that we were lucky to get city council to show up. We were lucky. We never had county supervisors. We never had any of the people that should be there be there. Once in a while, the council member would show up because they were obligated to, but that was maybe once or twice a year. So the fact that we've got Kohta at pretty much every meeting, the fact that we've got Jen Campbell's office at every meeting, those are a function of the fact that they can do that during their workday, and because they want their they want their evenings too. So I'm not saying we shouldn't consider. I like the idea of a quarterly meeting if we can do that. One of the things I think we have to look at is whether that will be allowed within this new structure, because one of the things that was kind of a foundation of this was you have a set day and a set time. So people in the community know that if it's the third Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. at the library, that's where the meeting's going to be. So that's a part of this. What we really need to do I think I agree, is increase the engagement. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
We've got all these disparate pieces of the community and different parts and people with different priorities, and we need to be addressing all of them. But I just wanted to point out that, you know, having we get much more attendance
Than the average.
of government offices at our meetings than I've ever seen at any of the other planning group meetings that I've ever attended.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, that certainly puts, you know, a mark in the keep it at 3 p.m. It's hard. It, you know, it isn't, I mean, it's hard sometimes for all of us. But knowing that now, I think that, you know, that's important, because I still feel that if they're on the, if they are on our agenda, they should be making the effort to attend. And I wish they could do that for everybody, but it feels kind of good to hear that at least we're getting it, you know, we're getting some attention. But I just do feel that we should find a nice, gentle way to ask them, you know, to let us know if they're not going to come, you know, and just tell them that we're not reading updates. You know, I mean, if you want to, but I just feel like every time that's happened, I just kind of go, really? Can you just have someone call and, you know, anyway.
As an audience member, can I just do something brief?
Please do.
Once upon a time, long ago, I served on the base reuse committee as part of the homeless services branch. And I have to tell you that I think the combination of this schedule of the 3 o'clock meetings once a month and a community meeting once a month would be wonderful. And I would appreciate it now as I would have then if the people who came representing government really were prepared to engage. And I will tell you that the people who did when I was on base reuse pretty much did not. The Navy did very much, but not the community people. So end of conversation.
Well, thank you for that context, Jim. I think that we've spent a good amount of time on this topic. We do have a few other things, and I know we try to get out of here by 5. So just for the interest of time, it doesn't always happen, but we try. In the interest of time, I think we can pause on this conversation. Like I said, I think there's a lot of ground that we've just covered. My general sense, and feel free to speak up if I'm like way off base here, but there is interest in, for sure, hearing from planning department, city directly on exactly what we're obligated to do and when we're obligated to do it, and how, you know, whatever hoops we're supposed to jump through, how we do that. I'll look to finalize that as soon as possible, ideally in February. From there, I think we can have a bigger, wider conversation about, okay, now how do we go ahead and comply with what we've got to do? You know, sort of, and that was, you know, I think we spent most of that on, like, you know, 5A. 5B was also in your attachments and your reading materials for this month. But basically, I dug up what I believe to be the most recent capital improvement project prioritization list in the impact fee study, which is one of the attachments. I don't spend a ton of time on this, but basically, we should be updating that, or at least like reviewing it to make sure that what is prioritized there is still what our priorities are. We won't get into that today. There's no action on that item, but I wanted to make sure I flag that. It's towards I think the fee impact study itself is 24 pages, and the prioritization list, and this includes the missing freeway connections for the 5 and the 8. This includes all kinds of different things that we touched base on over the years. But basically, like I said, just wanted to flag that for you all. That's also on the list of things that I think we need to, at the very least, review and confirm, and potentially review and update if we decide that that's the course of action. So that being said, we don't have any, like I said, official action items today. Does anyone have any questions on that just briefly before I move forward? I don't want to ignore anyone. Okay, not seeing any. No action items. CPC report. This most recent meeting, so we also were dark in December for CPC. Our most recent meeting was at the end of November, and we talked about potentially going back in person as well. There was an action item where we opted to continue virtually for all the reasons we've discussed here today. There was also an action item about that fee for, I guess, the cost-free appeals that the city has, I guess, rescinded. We spoke about that. We're sending a letter. I don't think anything's going to change, if I'm being honest. And then our next meeting for CPC is Tuesday next week. And actually, they're hearing from some folks at SANDAG about the regional plan and how that all works with respect to the city of San Diego. So I'll be in the audience representing the group that night, not working. That's my CPC report. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take those. But seeing none, I think we can accelerate straight through to, well, I guess chair report. Technically, I guess my only real chair report, we talked about a number of things. I've shared my feelings, my manifesto, if you will, of what I think we need to focus on this year. The only other update that I wanted to flag, and Judy, this is maybe even in line with your quarterly public meeting concept, the Midway Rising group that is redeveloping the sports arena, as part of their agreement with the city of San Diego, they are obligated to conduct quarterly in-person public meetings. And obviously that's specific to the sports arena redevelopment. But from what I understand, as far as the content of what they'll be doing at those meetings, each meeting will be themed for like transportation, conversations, parks and open space, like all the different components of their plan. There'll be some dedicated time across their quarterly agendas over the next 2 years. So the very first one that they're having, which I believe will be more of a level setting summary of where we are today, and ultimately like where the immediate next steps are, that's going to be February 8th in the evening. I believe it's 6 p.m. I don't think the time is set, but I do know that they've booked the room at EF. So the same room that we did our sports arena kind of town hall thing last year, that same room has been booked by those same people. They've got it from 5:30 to 8:30. I don't know if the program will be that entire 3 hours, but I do know that they're planning on including dinner for everyone who participates free of charge. So that's an option. I wanted to flag that for you. I'll continue to send out more information as I get it, but February 8th, it's a Wednesday. It's going to be right here at the EF building. So that's the other announcement I wanted to flag.
You said 4:30 to, I'm sorry, DK.
Sorry, 5:30 to 8:30 is what the reservation for the room is. And I know that only because I connected the sports arena people to the EF people, and they have not taken me off their CC as they continue to plan this meeting. So yeah, we'll see exactly what they land on. They're talking about either bringing in a food truck, or potentially, I guess EF has a restaurant on campus, so they're going to cater that. And then also the upside for that is not only is that venue quite nice, they've got parking, abundant parking for everyone who wants to come down. I can see it from my window if I lean out here, so I'll be there. It's quite close. But for everyone else who wants to attend that night, February 8th, sometime in the evening, more details to come.
DK, how are they communicating to the community about this?
That they're doing that. Yeah, so they also are obligated, is the word, to report back to the full city council on a quarterly basis. So their most recent, I believe, quarterly update was December 12th. Don't quote me, but sometime in early December. And that's sort of when they had to commit that they had a date scheduled. But frankly, I've given them the context for the OB-RAG, the Peninsula Beacon. I've offered our social media channels. I was on the phone with them, not this past Friday, but the Friday before, kind of just, giving them as much insight as I had into how best to communicate to this community. But I'm not sure what their final outreach plan is. I know they have like consultants on hand, but at a certain point, I have to keep living my own life, and I haven't tracked it too closely.
I hear you.
Hey, DK, I just looked into it, and you can actually sign up for their newsletter or their email list on the Midway Rising website.
There you go. Thank you very much, Evan. And I'll drop that in the chat now as well. Kathy.
Jason, do you think through like your email list? I mean, is that something you would want to
noticing our meetings or Midway
not
Rising
our
info?
meetings, but say the Midway Rising?
Yes. I generally have selected groups of people, business owners, property owners, interested in the Midway area stuff or sports arena news, Navwar news. I try to keep updated, as we get, important quarterly updates. I'll usually reach out to them. I probably don't have a good way to target like a blanket thing of people that are, basically just a 92110.
Yeah.
We got a bigger database of tenants and stuff, but I mean, it's La Mesa, Mission Valley, a bunch of different areas that probably may or may not help us get people there.
I think it's likely we're going to have that meeting will attract a lot of people who don't live in our district, at least that first one, I'm sure, which is okay. It should be well attended. People need to be paying attention. And it also may be a good, maybe it would be a good place for us to make a 2-minute announcement, like presentation thing that we would, that we in the future may have opportunities for non-board members to join us as we assess and look at this. I would love to, have input as we've had before from people from Point Loma, from the beach community, they've come and gone on things, and there's people who I think are interested enough and concerned enough as homeowners, property owners in those communities that they would maybe participate in some of our ad hoc committees, as we move forward.
Yeah, I agree completely. I have already secured some space at the top of the agenda for us to be able to talk about whatever. I mean, I haven't written the talking points yet, but yeah, we're gonna have an opportunity to speak on that.
That's good.
Maybe there's some outreach we can do through the press.
I agree, whether it's voice or even
or KUSI.
TV broadcast, anything. I think and honestly, frankly, like if I'm just being like super like I think strategic, the reality in sort of cold light of day, like the sports arena dominates people's perception of what this community is, right? People refer to the community as the sports. This is the Midway district, not the sports arena district. But we can't change that, and so I think we have to find a way to use it to our advantage, right? So the fact that there is going to be all of this focus and attention on the sports arena redevelopment, I think we need to be able to get creative and, like I said, leverage their public meetings. I mean, even like I used to work in PR, right? Like if you're pitching media, it's like here's the story hook, here's why it makes sense, and you should cover this, right? You should amplify this. You should help share our message. So I believe that all of that will manifest, and I'll be doing that. But at least in the immediate short term, as we talk about meeting structure, meeting cadence, subcommittees, ad hoc committees, obviously, like I said, the arena it's too big of, I think, like a piece of bait or like a hook. It's too big of a lure to not leverage it while we can to, like I said, continue to amplify our own capacity as a planning group.
Absolutely.
I agree. I have a couple of friends in media places, so I'll if I have the details, I can see if they'll pitch it. I think they will. They might even come. So
okay, yeah. So anyone, if you have any contacts, obviously you know where to reach me. Send me an email. We'll get moving on that. I think we want to for sure amplify that February 8th date. I do think that according to the fire marshal, their capacity is like 141, which I believe was maybe part of why they haven't like gone gangbusters and blowing it up everywhere. Because that's one of the considerations for in-person meeting is that we do have fire marshals who dictate things. But yeah, we'll be active there for sure.
I was going to say, yeah, will they broadcast that? I mean, I missed that Navwar thing. I wanted to be on in December, but I know they have it, that 2-hour video uploaded. I just haven't had a chance to go watch it.
Somewhere, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but I'll find out and I'll communicate all of the relevant details as soon as I'm able. Okay, so that does the chair report. New business. So one of the things I had on here that we do probably need to at least address and make a plan for. We do typically do elections in March. I think that over the last 3, 4, or 5 years I've been involved, Jason has heroically championed and chaired our election subcommittee, but I know he's got a lot of different things going on. And so I believe, Jason, don't let me speak for you, but I believe we're looking for someone to potentially step into Jason's role and chair our election subcommittee.
Mayors, do more than 250 mayors.
Yeah, if we can, again, I could potentially help and try to coordinate what I have as well. And always have in the back of my mind. Don't think don't think it's taken a lot of my time in the past, but definitely at least just being the go-to person that we can kind of funnel people to is probably helpful.
Yeah, you want to graduate to like paddle, or what is it like when you're the sensei, the master up on the hill, but you need someone else on the ground? No, I think Judy, I think you made a really good comment earlier about like not everything gets written down or recorded, and like a lot of things are just oral history or just, oh, I've done that before, so I'll do it again. And I definitely appreciate Jason doing the elections every year, but like I think Jason's the only one who's done an election when we look at our current composition. So if there's anyone who wants to sign up now, that would be appreciated. If not, that's also okay, because if push comes to shove, either Jason or myself will get it done. But in the spirit of increased engagement from the wider community, it would be lovely if someone felt passionate about election subcommittees. But seeing no hands, I'll plant that seed. In February, we're going to actually establish it and then actually move forward there. And so we'll go
for March, right?
Yeah, exactly. We will, at our March meeting, we will have our election. So for February, we'll have an action item to effectually establish the election subcommittee.
Do you have a list of
The
who's up
terms
for,
and
what
reviews?
seats are open and
Yep.
going to be open? Can you tell us those things now? Do you know them now?
Yeah, so we have 2 official vacancies that we've been carrying. Like I said, Quentin he called me today after I sent like a reminder out, basically saying that he's going to wind up standing down. So we're back up to 3. Kathy is the only one who's technically termed out this year. And those are the 4 seats that we're basically looking to fill, right? And actually, I mean, I'm not sure how it works where you're termed out, but you've had your 1 year cooling off, but you were also on the board. I'll seek clarification there. But basically, we have 3 seats that are up for grabs as I see it, right? And that's including Kathy staying in some capacity. We have 3 vacancies.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And so if somebody were interested, they should contact you?
Yeah, me, Jason, anyone. That's fine, and you can definitely give them the MPHCPG at
What is that website? I mean, what is that email again?
Okay, Rebecca just messaged, says she's going to drop. We are over 5. I do really want to circle back to something that came up at the very beginning of that meeting. We had public comment from Becky, from Phil, about the cannabis permit on Kettner. From what I recall, I think Becky and Phil both mentioned that there's a public meeting on January 25th, which is a week from today. And so, Phil, I appreciate you continuing to stay on this entire time. I don't know what the best thing for us to do is. I definitely will say, from what I recall of your comments, like, yes, appreciate the fact that despite the fact that we've technically already approved your application, something has changed, and you've taken it upon yourself to come and tell us that something changed, right? You've been exposed to new information. That is appreciated. You know, in some ways, I would say that's like the bare bones. Like that would be my expectation. But also, you know, you have to be honest. Like not everyone does that, and so you got to call it out when you see it. So thank you for coming back, being transparent, talking to us, and spending your time. However, can you just talk us through like what? So remind us what exactly has changed, what the meeting next week is, and then like basically what sort of opportunities for future engagement we have as a group.
Sure.
As individuals who make up this group.
Yeah, no, happy to. So the meeting next week is the hearing officer. So these permits are a process 3, which means that the hearing officer has a public hearing and they make a decision. That decision is final unless someone appeals that decision to the planning commission, at which point the planning commission makes a final decision on whether this CUP should exist or not. What changed since the last time I was with you all was that I thought that we would be okay with constricting the on-site parking to be exclusive to customers only. But in talking with the owner of the application, realized that is not something we can commit to 100% of the time, every day, all day. There will be incidental use by employees of the facility. And so we're being very cautious. These permits are very strictly scrutinized, and we have code enforcement visits on a regular basis, actually proactively, not even complaint based. So it's very important that we don't promise to do things that we're just going to ignore later. So I feel like it's important to inform you all that I understand why that request was made. And you should know that it is absolutely always our goal to give customers priority parking. We're in the business of making it easy for customers to get to our store. However, the extremeness of never ever shall a employee be in one of those parking stalls is not something we can honestly say we're okay with. So we're going to move forward without that condition. I felt like it was only important to inform you of that. I certainly hope it doesn't make you opposed to the project. I would request that be, not the only consideration. There were actually a few people who voted no because they didn't feel like the redistricting issue had been resolved. That, as of today, is now completely resolved because time has passed on. So that was really it. I just didn't want to rudely ignore you. But if you want to revisit it, take a different vote, that's really up to you. We just wanted to make sure you knew.
Okay. I think that's fair from my standpoint, and thank you for clarifying. I remember that conversation, and we can definitely refer to our minutes as far as how and why we got to that sort of, I guess, caveat or that contingency in our overall approval. But just I think by virtue of the fact that your hearing officer or your hearing is next week, and we've already, like I said, approved it, I don't know that there's a further action that we can take as a board before next week to influence anything. Judy, no, we're talking about our meeting in, when was that, July, when you came? And Ken, and I can send you those minutes, Judy. I think she just messaged me directly.
Yeah, that was in July.
In July. So yeah, at this point, like I said, I appreciate at the very least you giving us a heads up. If you can share any information about the hearing you have next week, I believe there's opportunity for public comment, right? And so we don't have time or space or capacity to take a formal position or a formal reposition as a board, but I will send that information out to the board members and encourage them all, anyone who feels a certain kind of way, to call in and give your own individual public comment, and basically just say whatever you think is appropriate at that point, right? Judy, sure.
I have a quick question. Remind me, Phil, how far from public transportation is your location? Can you remind us?
Phil, you might be on mute if you're talking, or maybe you're just searching.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we are pretty close. I can't remember which station of the trolley is closest, but we're right next to the Casbah.
Okay, is it within a half mile of a station?
Oh, definitely within a half mile. It's
well,
more
that
yards.
it may not even be something that we could even
really influence, right? And
influence because of the recent change in the law. Yeah, I don't remember the law. So many things change on a regular basis, but City of San Diego, I mean, now they're not.
I don't think that this project even requires parking at all, right, Phil?
Right. See, that's what I was going to say. I
Yeah.
think that now it doesn't even matter. Like we wouldn't, like our preference wouldn't probably have any sway at this point. I hate to admit it, but at this point, I'm not sure we would have any influence anyway. Is that right, DK?
I mean, definitely not. I mean, not that I am aware
maybe
of.
not.
Between now and next week Wednesday, like I don't know who the different. It's the Planning Commission, you said, right? So the City of San Diego Planning Commission.
Hearing officer is next week.
Hearing officer. Yeah, I don't know any hearing.
Yeah, because I don't think that they're going to be required to have any parking at all, even for for customers or anything, because they're within a half mile.
Yeah.
Although with the cannabis, I don't know that I don't think it's
all murky.
called out as an exception.
Yeah, I would say specifically that because of the it's a short turnaround, we'll monitor whatever happens next week. Phil, I'm assuming you and your client will be monitoring what happens as well. If you can just kind of give us an update as to whatever the outcome is. If we need to bring it up again, we will, and if not, then we'll continue living our lives.
Understood. Yeah, and to your question, that's correct. No parking is required for this site. We are doing it by choice.
Right. So yeah, and as you said, Phil, there was still some open discussions. Things weren't firmed up with this when you made that presentation 6 or 7 months ago now.
Yeah.
So,
No, well, thank you all for the consideration, and I just want to keep a open, transparent line of communication, and we'll proceed as I described, and thanks for taking our input today.
we appreciate you letting us know of the change. I think that was admirable. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
no, I appreciate it. It's not required, but we do appreciate it.
Great.
So with that, I will move from new business to old business, or I guess maybe we'll conclude old business if that counts as old business. I don't have anything else for old business or new business, so I believe we've reached the end of our agenda unless anyone else has anything else before we pack it in. Seeing no hands, and I think we've probably just about lost quorum at this point anyway. We will adjourn this meeting at 5:15. Sorry for the late start, sorry for the late end, but we're all good to go. Cole, thanks for hanging out the entire time. Good to see you. And yeah, if anyone needs anything, you know where to find me.
Thank you.
Thanks, DK.
Cheers, guys. Take care.